Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Flea Market Magic by Bella Falls. Narrated by Johanna Parker. Chapter 1. The old truck dipped under my feet when I hoisted myself up onto the bed. Something about the warmth of the early sun, the scent of the morning, and the way the wind blew spoke to the bargain hunter in me. We needed all the ropes we could take to tie down our purchases from today's quest. Rummaging around the newer aluminum crossover toolbox, I couldn't even find a spool of string. My uncle's whistle bounced off the nearby buildings, and I hustled off the back of the truck, climbing over the wood slats that helped hold in all the goodies we hauled. I jumped down and landed slightly askew, my right ankle almost twisting in my cowboy boot. I stood in front of the driver's side door with my arms crossed. "Move your butt out of the way, Ruby Mae Jewell," my uncle demanded when he caught sight of me. I held my ground, staring at him through my sunglasses. "You ain't driving today or any other day, Drunkle Joe. You lost your license for drinking at the hole and driving home." "You're the one who took it away, not the police," he complained, trying to move me aside. I leaned my weight against the metal of the door, blocking his progress with my body. "You're real lucky you haven't been caught yet. And you know how it's gonna look if one of the Jewell family gets arrested for drunk driving." "Wouldn't be the first of our long line to see the inside of a jail. Probably won't be the last." He took off his trucker hat and scratched the few sweaty strands on his almost bald head. I pulled my glasses down my nose to glare at him. "You'll get your license back when you've been on the straight and narrow for at least a full, solid cycle of the moon. And where the heck's all the rope?" "Most of it's at the shop. We'll stop by there first, and then at the house for a second. Come on, let's get going. Daylight's wasting, and we've got deals to make." Uncle Joe bowed low in front of me, giving me control of the truck. He moseyed to the passenger side and pulled himself in, the old vehicle dipping under his weight. "Most of it? Where's the rest of the rope?" He wiggled his eyebrows at me. "Your aunt and I, sometimes we like to—" I held up my hand. "Stop!" I didn't need the visuals of him and Aunt Delia grinding corn together up at the house. With a moan, I brushed the stray wisps of red hair behind my ears and placed my straw cowboy hat on my head. "Let's go." Turning the key, I waited for good old Bessie to fire to life. She groaned and shook beneath us, but wheezed and conked out without her engine turning over. "Shoulda let me drive," sang my uncle, looking away from me and whistling. "Hush," I scolded, stroking the worn steering wheel. "Come on, old girl. You can do it." Trying again, I begged and cajoled her to very little success. Uncle Joe hopped out. "I can walk faster to the shed. Meet you there." I hung my head out of the rolled-down window. "Ain't you gonna help me get her running?" "Nope. You drive, your responsibility." He waved at me and hollered over his shoulder. "You could always call your mechanic boyfriend and see if he can do something, if you can't." "You know he doesn't do mornings," I complained, sticking my middle finger up at my uncle's considerable backside, walking away from me. I dug in my pocket and pulled out my spell phone. My fingers hovered over Luke's name. It was never a good idea to awaken a person who loathed mornings, even a worse one to disturb a sleeping vampire. "I don't need to be rescued," I declared, shoving my spell phone back in my pocket. With a few pulls of levers, I popped open Bessie's hood and stared at the engine block. It could be the oil, although I had no idea where the dipstick was located. Or it could be the radiator. At least, I thought truck engines had radiators. I shrieked with impatient frustration as I slammed the hood shut. What options did I have? To call on my boyfriend, who would drag himself out of his bed and help out of loyalty, despite his predilection to sleep in. To drive my cousin Deacon's precious shiny F-150, which would definitely get scratched in the process of hauling home our bounty. Or to give up on going to the flea market altogether, even though my entire being buzzed with impending good fortune in our search for bargains. I climbed back inside the cab and slumped into the front seat. Leaning forward, I gripped the steering wheel and begged. "Bessie, sugar, you and me, we're just two girls who want to get the job done. Let's help each other out." I tried turning the key again, and she sputtered and shook, but still didn't come to life. I smacked my hand on the wheel and pointed at her. "You know, Uncle Joe's been talking about getting a brand new van, saying how he's going to give up using a truck, talking about the scrap yard. You don't want that, do you?" I threatened. The turn of the key produced nothing but silence. "Oh, it's like that?" With my will, I drew upon my internal magic and let it flow through me. Tingles stretched down my arms toward my fingers. "Listen here, Bess. I can give you a jump start with my powers, but you should know I'm an elemental fire witch. I could end up setting you ablaze," I warned. With one more try, the engine coughed and rumbled. Closing my eyes, I attempted a little of my magic, willing it down through the wheel, into the rusting metal, and under the hood. Imagining a tiny spark, I released my intent and let go. Old Bessie shuddered underneath my behind and roared to life. I opened one eye to make sure smoke wasn't billowing out from under the hood. "Good girl. Next time, if you just work right off the bat, I won't have to risk your life." Pulling up in front of the storage barn, I honked the horn. Uncle Joe emerged carrying an armload of neatly tied ropes. Buddy, our resident outdoor cat, trotted behind him with his tail high in the air. My uncle threw the ropes onto the truck bed and did his best to hoist himself up. The cat jumped in with no problems, clawing and chewing on the ropes with his claws until my uncle fussed at him. Once everything was loaded in the truck box, Uncle Joe picked up the cat and struggled his way off the back of the truck. Sweat poured down his face by the time he reached the passenger side, and he set Buddy down on the ground and took out a red bandana to wipe himself off.
"Okay, house next."
He opened the door, and the cat bounded onto the seat. "Hey, Buddy, you being a good barn kitty and keeping all the rodents and roaches from overrunning it?" I crooned in a sweet voice, tickling his chin. The black and white beastie rubbed my arm with his head and meowed how much of a good boy he really was. The black smudge above his white mouth in the shape of a mustache always amused me, and I scratched his little head while I giggled, earning more purrs.
"That wily animal can't come with us,"
declared Uncle Joe. He snapped his fingers in a failed attempt to force the cat into obedience. When Buddy turned his backside towards him instead, my uncle grasped him by the scruff of his neck and drug him out of the truck, setting him down on the ground again.
"Stay."
"See you later, buds," I called out, putting the truck into gear and driving away once Uncle Joe got in. The vehicle trundled down the dirt road toward the family home until I slammed on the brakes, causing both of us to lurch forward. A big black hog with a few white spots and pink tips to his ears, snout, and hooves stood in the way. Bessie's horn blared at the animal. It cocked its bulging head in our direction and snorted. "Come on, Deacon." I slammed my hand on the horn a few more times. "Move out of the way." The hog snuffled the ground, searching for something to munch on and expressing its unwillingness to budge. "Go move him. He's your son," I commanded my uncle.
"Which means he's gonna listen to me? Fat chance. You go. Time's a-wasting."
Uncle Joe dipped his head in the direction of the pig, darting his eyes away to hide the sadness in them. I threw the truck in park and got out, grumbling the whole way. When I stood in front of the enormous creature, I placed my hands on my hips and tapped the toe of my cowboy boot. "Well, what do you want?" My cousin, in his animal form, tilted his head, regarding me with his beady eye while chewing on some grass.
"Where you going?"
he grunted in a low rasp. "It's Saturday. Big flea market just outside of Smooter," I replied, frustrated at my cousin's stubbornness.
"Not till you promise to find a way for me to change back,"
Deacon managed between snorts. "Listen, Bacon," I smirked, using the nickname he earned whenever he acted too annoying. "You're the one who was being too much of a player with the ladies. It's not on me or any of the rest of us that you messed with the wrong witch, or that you didn't even know anything about her, so we had something to go on to free you from her curse. As she said, if you're gonna act like a pig, you might as well be one." The hog lumbered over and pushed its considerable weight against me, knocking me off balance.
But you're the best at finding the right stuff. Can't one of the objects you've got locked up fix me?
As a rule, none of our family talked about the secret stash we kept in a vault on a nearby sea island, out of a fear of discovery. My cousin's mention of it spoke to his desperation. I scratched the pig between the ears. "I'm sorry, Deacon. I know it must be tough on you. And I promise, when we're searching through stuff today, I'll see if there's anything there that might be helpful. I told you, we'll do everything we can to change you back."
Please.
The pig lifted its snout so it could gaze at me.
Sometimes I feel myself slipping away.
I crouched down to his eye level. "I promise. We all love you, cuz," I whispered and kissed his dirty noggin for good measure. Satisfied, Deacon the pig wandered off the dirt road and out of our way. Not wanting to hesitate anymore, I hustled back into the truck and revved the engine, slipping the gear shift into drive and moving forward.
I assume my son is doing okay. I told him someday his chasing tail would get him into trouble, and now he actually has one of his own.
Uncle Joe's brow furrowed in personal frustration at the situation. "He is, but maybe we stay on high alert today for anything that might help him a little more often." I kept the bit where my cousin told me he was becoming more animal than man to myself. Deacon could be being a tad bit dramatic, like his old self. I didn't want to think about the consequences if he really was losing the battle to hold on to his humanity. When we pulled up in front of the white farmhouse where most of the family lived, I kept Bessie's motor running rather than tempt fate for the engine to die again, following my uncle inside. He bounded up the stairs to wherever he had the rest of the ropes hidden, and I followed the echoes of conversation into the kitchen in the back.
"Buck, I think you need to find yourself another woman,"
admonished the transparent older lady, cracking an egg into the cast-iron skillet on the stove. My father leaned back in his chair, rolling his eyes.
"I'm already married, Granny. Don't know how many times I gotta say it."
"Buckley Jewell."
My great-grandmother's spectral body faded in and out of focus, becoming wispy and incorporeal in her irritation.
"For the life of me, I don't know what you ever saw in Reva Johnson that earned your loyalty. She done up and left your family years ago. Surely you must be over that lying, cheating, evil—"
"Morning, Daddy, Granny Josephine," I interrupted, not too keen on listening to the same old argument or to another dead family member's ghost spewing disparaging words about my absent mother, even if Mom deserved it. Dad got up from his chair and rushed over, kissing my cheek.
"Hey, darling, I'm glad you're here as living proof of mine and Reva's love for one another."
I drew him in for a big hug, a little disappointed at my father's unwillingness to let my mother go. The letters I received on my birthday and Christmas proclaimed how much she adored me, and I suppose at one point she used to feel the same about Daddy, but her feelings for us didn't stop her from leaving and never coming back. I hoped that deep down my father acknowledged that she valued her freedom to roam the earth far more than us. Maybe someday he would break free of whatever hold she still had on him.
"You want some eggs?"
my great-grandmother offered as an apology for being caught talking ugly. I glanced at the smoke billowing from the pan. Ghosts were not necessarily the best cooks when distracted. "No thanks. Uncle Joe and I will pick something up from Aunt Delia and Danny on our way out." Granny Josephine waved her spatula at me, her body wavering in and out of focus again.
"You tell that boy he owes me."
"Owes you what, Gran?" I asked. She narrowed her eyes.
"He knows what."
I didn't press any further, no telling what object she desired, and sometimes it was far better not knowing. "Will do."
"Who are you gonna take with you?"
My father took a sip of his coffee. Fingering the chain around my neck, I pulled it out from under my shirt, and a heavy brass token bigger than a quarter dangled in front of all of us. "I don't know. Which jewel do you think wants a ride today?" The old family heirloom glistened in a beam of sun filtering through the nearby window. An etch of an elephant stood out in relief on one side, while on the other, the Latin phrase non ducor duco was stamped on it. Daddy had passed it on to me when I got old enough to go picking on my own. Someone in our family had turned it into an amulet, which might have lowered its monetary value, but to us increased its value to priceless.
"You might as well put out a general request,"
suggested my great-grandmother, her body wavering between solid and see-through.
"You might even be able to call the family progenitor to you if you word your invitation sweet enough."
Right, like good old Daniel Jewell isn't long gone, turned to dust and restin', I teased. Something maybe you should think about.
"Don't sass me, young lady, or I'll haunt that run-down shack of yours. I don't know why you refuse to live in the house with the rest of us."
Granny Josephine placed her hands on her hips, ignoring the breakfast she destroyed in the cast-iron skillet. "Too many ghosts," I mumbled, making my way to the foyer, the one place the house never changed, despite its predilection to grow and expand, to accommodate the family who forgot they were supposed to leave when they passed away. Glancing at all the portraits of the many members of the Jewell line that graced 2 walls, I marveled at my magical lineage. Most of the eyes staring back at me belonged to powerful witches, although I spotted the one great-great-great-aunt my kin claimed to be a mermaid. The story I loved said she'd given up her life in the ocean to marry into the family. At least 1 or 2 jewels hitched themselves to mortal humans, despite the prejudice of their times. I wondered if my vampire boyfriend might end up on the wall someday, if he ever got the courage to ask for my hand in the first place. Uncle Joe huffed his way down the stairs, carrying more ropes.
"You ready to go yet?"
"Almost. Just gotta pick up the last person." I flashed the elephant token at him.
"Meet you in the truck."
He brushed past me, and I heard his clomping footsteps on the porch outside. I drew in a deep breath to center myself. Holding the metal piece in my hand, I filtered some of my magic into it. Whether due to my fire elemental talents or the general familial magic, the token heated in my fingers. When my dad called on a ghost volunteer to go with him to search for items, he used fancy old incantations to call forth spirits. I had no patience to remember the words or wait for a ghost to be flattered enough to accept the invitation. Concentrating, I called out, "Hey, any jewels out there want to go to the flea market with us? I'll get you back by supper time." Wind blew through the room and knocked the cowboy hat off my head, ruffling the strands of red hair framing my face. Shadows formed in front of me, but none of them materialized enough for clear identification. One of them pointed to the front door, and I feared my lack of formal spellcasting had insulted them. Dejected, I crouched down to retrieve my hat and trudged out of the house. The token grew hot in my palm, and I stopped where I stood on the front porch. A creak from one of the old chairs rocking back and forth interrupted my disappointment, and the faint scent of a cigar wafted in front of me. "Grandpa? Is that you?" My father's dad had enjoyed blowing smoke rings and other fantastical shapes to make me giggle when I was younger.
"Who else, beanpole?"
My grandfather's voice surrounded me like an embrace, even though I couldn't see him. I smiled at his old nickname for me, although my womanly curves proved it inaccurate. "Do you want to go with us?"
"You looking for treasures?"
A faint ring of smoke appeared out of nowhere, floating away on the breeze. "Always. If you want to help out, you can come with us." I held up the token in front of me.
"I will, if you take the dog, too,"
he bargained. I glanced at the hound laying at the foot of the chair and raised an eyebrow. "Not Slobby Bobby."
"That's my offer. Take it or leave it."
Another puff of smoke billowed out of nowhere. I closed my eyes, wondering how I'd come to the place in my life where I made deals with ghosts. But my grandfather had been a notorious bargain hunter, one of the best in the business. If anyone could help us on our quest, he could. "Fine, I'll take it." I did my best not to choke on the plume of cigar stench that enveloped the token, as my grandfather's spirit inhabited it. My magic recognized his disembodied presence in the metal and I slipped it under my shirt again. I walked off the front porch and down the steps, hoping to bypass the dog. The metal of the token heated in discontent, and I yelped in frustration. Bobby's head lifted in the air, and he whimpered. "Fine, let's go." I snapped my fingers and pointed at the back of the truck. The hound's tail thumped, and in his excitement, drool formed at the corners of his mouth, pooling on the porch. I cursed the foul beast under my breath and walked to the vehicle, whistling for him to follow. Bobby popped up on his paws and rushed down the stairs, his tail wagging his behind. For a dog that wanted to be part of the team, he was a little too thick in the head to understand he needed to jump into the truck. Uncle Joe rolled down his window, surveying the scene.
"I take it my dad's joining us?"
"Yep." I walked around the front of the cab and got in the driver's side. If the dog couldn't figure out how to get in, that wasn't my fault. With more patience than me, my uncle got out and picked Bobby up like a baby, settling them both into the passenger seat. "Oh, so you'll help the hound get in so he can come with us, but Buddy got chucked out on his behind?" I teased.
"Buddy is a barn cat. Doesn't like to go that far away from his territory. But Dad's a smart man. I bet the dog will help us find all the good deals,"
Uncle Joe promised. "And soak us once we get going. He hasn't earned his name for nothing." Throwing the truck in gear, I drove to the last place on the edge of our land, pulling up in front of the Rise and Shine Cafe. The bells on the glass front door of the repurposed gas station jingled when Aunt Delia and my cousin Danny exited, their hands full. Bobby wiggled on my uncle's lap and stared out the window, a long strand of slobber dangling from his mouth. I wrinkled my nose in disgust. And so it begins. "Hey, Rue, I've got a large double-shot caramel latte here and a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit for you." Danny handed me the cup through my window, proving her uncanny ability to know what the customers wanted before they did once again. My stomach growled in impatience with the scent of breakfast. "Thanks, cousin, but the bacon is a bit unfortunate. Just saw your brother. You might want to go visit with him a little. I think he needs to remember he belongs to us." Aunt Delia handed my uncle his food and drink, narrowly avoiding a slobbery kiss from Bobby. "I put in extra hash brown patties. Make sure to share them with my niece," she instructed. "You two have a productive day. Come home with lots of treasures." She blew a kiss for luck at both of us and backed away. Uncle Joe and I arranged our goodies so they wouldn't spill. He snapped open the glove box.
"What'll it be? Kenny? Loretta? Johnny?"
He rooted through the few tapes stashed inside. I considered my choices and picked the sassiest out of them all. "I think today deserves a little Dolly." My uncle slipped the cassette tape into the ancient player and whooped out aloud, "Wahoo!" The beginning notes to the song rang out of the speakers, and I cranked it up. "It may be a few hours before 9, and I hope we're done before 5, but let's get to work." Chapter 2. By the time I pulled into the dirt parking lot for the flea market outside of Smooter, I'd consumed 1 breakfast biscuit and 2 hash brown patties, drunk my caramel latte until caffeine buzzed through my veins, and wiped off at least a gallon of Slobby Bobby's drool. "Seriously, Uncle Joe, that dog's a menace." I jumped down from the truck cab, still mopping up some of the sticky saliva off my shirt with the last napkin. "Next time, I gotta wear a raincoat or something." My uncle chuckled, ignoring his soaked shirt.
"But he's the best bargain hunter of us all. Plus, since everyone loves on him, we tend to get favorable pricing. So quit your whining and get your witchy butt to work."
I straightened my cowboy hat and did what I love to do. Most everyone knew I came from a long line of scroungers, pickers, and bargain hunters. If someone wanted to get rid of something they'd labeled trash, then us Jewels were there to snatch it up and turn it into a treasure. I checked my mental list for items we wanted to find. Daddy wanted any wood furniture in decent condition he could refurbish and sell. One of my girl crew, Crystal, always wanted anything she could turn into a beach-themed resell. Other than those parameters, the field was wide open for me to explore. Excitement and restlessness invigorated me. The early birds rustled through the stalls and vendors of the day to snag the best items. I joined them in their initial assessments, but unless something special jumped out at me, I knew better than to pay first prices. Better to wait and see, especially with any new sellers who didn't know how to play the game right. As always, Uncle Joe was proven right when Bobby distracted a dog-friendly vendor who sold him a couple of mahogany side tables for a fraction of the asking price. With that promising start, the two of us decided to stick together, allowing the dog or the token around my neck to help narrow down everything we saw. At another stall, we watched with irritation a seller trying to fleece a young couple into paying double the amount for a cheap modern reproduction of an antique buffet. Determined not to let the guy get away with his ruse, Uncle Joe created a diversion by knocking over a gaudy, silver-plated statue, allowing me to approach the young man and woman. If you're looking for authentic antiques, try the stall at the end of that row. I pointed far away from where we stood. The seller there is an old friend. Tell her Ruby Mae sent you, and she'll give you a good deal. I swear, she wouldn't dare try to sell you a reproduction made within the last decade. The young woman's eyes widened. You mean this isn't a real antique from before the Civil War?
I told you he was charging too much,
her husband grumbled, twisting his wedding ring on his finger in frustration. Never pay the asking price, and always do a thorough inspection. If you want something antique, the drawers should have dovetail joints done by hand, not by machinery. If the sides, bottom, and back of the wood have no nicks, then it wasn't handmade, I explained, keeping an eye on my uncle, who distracted the seller by pretending to bargain for an ugly statue. We just got married, and I wanted to decorate our new home with a few good pieces, the newlywed bride pouted. I smiled and congratulated them both. Sounds like a fun adventure to do together. But try to pick something that you both want and won't cost you twice as much as it should. Here. I handed them a business card I always had at the ready. Precious Jewels, the young woman read out loud. Sounds like a jewelry place, but it says here you sell antique furniture? We've got a barn full of different things, not all of it vintage. There's repurposed furniture, collectibles, and all kinds of things. But if you have any questions, just call, I offered. Any of us Jewels can help you.
Hey, the seller barked. Are you trying to poach my customers?
We changed our minds, the young woman countered, sticking her nose in the air. The angry man stomped over to us.
I thought we had a deal,
he growled at the husband.
We're going to keep looking,
the young man insisted.
Thanks.
He put his arm around his wife and gave me a slight nod as they left the stall and headed in the direction I'd pointed them. The seller turned his beady eyes on me and poked my shoulder with his finger.
You just cost me a sale.
Fury boiled underneath my surface at his audacity. It took great control to contain the fire zipping through my veins, igniting my powers. If I were you, I would do two things, sugar, I warned. He smirked.
The name's Earl, not Sugar, little lady.
I gritted my teeth at his condescending tone and continued. 1. Don't try to pass off cheap reproductions as antiques and slap too high a price on them. That'll get you in hot water with those of us in the biz, Earl. The annoying man shrugged.
It's my job to sell things, not to make sure people aren't stupid.
I drew in a deep breath and concentrated on calming down. No good could come from actual flames shooting out of me and setting everything around us ablaze. Something wet touched my hand, nudging it and distracting me enough from my magic to calm to a dull buzz. Looking down, I broke into a light chuckle at Bobby slobbering on my hand. Uncle Joe stood close by at the ready should anything go wrong, but he gave me the space to take care of myself. 2, I continued, wanting to be done and get away from the jerk. You might want to remember that the community that runs and shops at places like this, well, we all know each other, and we'll be making sure you don't get another space here or within 100 miles anytime soon. With a curt nod, I wove my way around the rest of his goods to leave.
Hey,
he called after me, following us.
You can't do that.
Uncle Joe stopped in his tracks and turned, his large presence overwhelming the smaller man.
Here.
He rummaged in the bag he carried and pulled out the awful statue he'd had to purchase to buy me time.
But you already paid me for it,
Earl stuttered. My uncle scoffed.
I got you down to a better price than your original ask, and I consider it
Sample complete. Ready to continue?